name's Kay Stoner, and I am a data hoarder. I collect data and I parse it as a hobby. This is just a small sample of what I've collected over the last 40 years since I was a kid. I have had a number of chronic health conditions since my early 20s, and I have not had a lot of help or haven't had a lot of success resolving them medically. I have actually taken to tracking my health conditions in order to manage them effectively, and I found that that really helps me not only understand my situation better, but also collect information to pass along to my healthcare providers as well. Now, in the course of my record keeping, I've noticed that a lot of my symptoms have come and gone for apparently no reason. I mean, it's kind of a mystery to my doctors as well as to me. The one constant has really been headaches. I usually have a headache, and I actually have one now. In the course of trying to figure things out, I mean, pills and over-the-counter medications often don't work for me. Aleve and Tylenol are pretty much worthless to me. So I've looked for other ways to address these issues. Body work is one way that I handle things. Acupuncture helps, as does massage. Also taking a nap, a nice long nap, and stretching, those things are very helpful for me as well. So fortunately, in tracking my headaches and finding different ways of handling things, I've gotten to a point now where I don't always have to have a headache, which is pretty nice. I mean, it's really, it's a nice change from where it was before. My headaches were pretty much constant, and I just took them for granted as it was just background noise in my life. Now, when I would talk to my doctors and they would say, well, how are you doing? I'd say, well, I have a headache. And they say, oh, really? And they would want more information. I had a heck of a time trying to explain to my doctors what the deal was, because they wanted to know duration, they wanted to know severity, they wanted to know how many there were, when they were, the things that came along with it, and I had a really hard time communicating with them. So I had to find a better way, a more systematic way of tracking. So I started tracking in December of 2007, and over the course of the past 6.5 years, I've done, with greater or lesser frequency, I've done regular tracking of my headaches. And because I was tracking so many other issues that I had, it was just a matter of adding it to the list. So I just threw it in there into the spreadsheet and tracked it along with everything else that I was following. Now, it's interesting that the different ways that I've tracked, I've used pieces of paper, scraps of paper, Word documents, grids, of course the spreadsheets, of course you have to use spreadsheets. And then I also built an online tracking tool that let me visualize and sort and save the information for later. So here's kind of the progression of where I was. I started out putting things down, drawing pictures on a piece of paper, and then putting them into a grid for parsing out later. And then eventually I came around to just getting back to the pictures again, because I found that the richness of the information was easier to record and convey in a picture than putting it into a spreadsheet. I mean, front left, front center, front right, where in the head is it happening, what's the severity, what's the duration. Trying to put it on a spreadsheet was problematic. Also, I did write a web application to track my health issues, and that was good. I mean, if I had internet connectivity, it was great, and there was something kind of cool about collecting all that data and having it on the server. The problem was I didn't have enough richness to really convey it with my doctor. And it also wasn't quite as shareable as I wanted it to be. Having to mouse over these things to see the data behind it. And it actually says more about the level of my expertise than the actual capabilities of the technology. So I did go back to paper. And I printed out 8.5 by 11 sheets that I could fold in half, and I could just put it in my daily minder and carry it with me. And I had collected a whole bunch of different sheets, and I thought, wouldn't it be easier if I just had a spiral-bound notebook? So, so I had the spiral-bound log that I carry with me, and I track my headaches in that, and I can also clip together the extra pages and drop them in there. So what have I learned? All sorts of things, my headaches, my doctors, and myself. It's been very informative. So One thing that I learned is that I had an MRI a number of years ago, and the MRI came back looking great. I mean, I was fine. Everybody said I was great. And I realized that there was no correlation really between the drawings that I had in my experience and what was showing up in the imagery. I also found that in terms of communicating with my doctor, I really couldn't fake the lingo. I'm not medically trained, so talking to my doctors about parietal, temporal lobes, occipital, dorsal, ventral, lateral, all that stuff, it just didn't work. It was much easier for them to look at a picture and see, because then they could look at the picture and they could convert that information into their electronic health records in the way that they wanted to express it, in the way that they could understand it. I also found that I had a kind of personal Prius effect, that when I was tracking and recording, I was aware of what was happening and I would make minor adjustments to how I was living. I would stretch, I would change what I was eating, I would have a drink of water, I would do different things. The other thing I learned is that tracking my headaches in exhaustive detail tends to really depress me. It's not much fun. And it's informative and that, but sometimes it kind of wrecks my day. Also, having tools is great, but only if they serve me rather than the other way around. I found that the tools actually became kind of the master rather than the servant, and I was spending a lot of time fiddling around with things instead of focusing on my issues. I always have extra sheets with me, so I can carry them around in my daily minder just in case I need it. And the important thing is to have all the data collected in the same way. I can also, from drawing, from writing things down, I can see if I'm having a bad day. If my handwriting is terrible, I'm having a bad day. And that's additional richness of information that I can't get from putting it into a spreadsheet or into a computer. The other thing, my journal does not do me much good at the doctor if it's sitting at home on my desk. So I need to remember to take it with me when I go to the doctor, because it's not doing her any good right there. But I think overall, the thing that I learned the most is that even if I do have a headache, even if this is always there, it doesn't have to wreck my life. And that my internal state is not necessarily dependent on what's happening outside of me. That I'm actually a really happy person, pain and all. So this is my information, and thank you for your time, and be well. Yeah?
I just had a question on, do you feel like you changed any of the way you were collecting the data as you were keeping the journal? So could you look at something, let's say yesterday and 3 months ago, and would it be comparable or would it be something that you'd have to interpret? I mean, if someone else was looking at it, would they?
Right, right. Well, I actually found that I became a lot more detailed in what I was collecting. At the start, back in 2007, there were an awful lot of 2 out of 10 days or 3 out of 10 days. After a number of years of tracking that, I realized that it actually hurt a lot more than I let on. And so I started to see more 6 or 7 out of 10 days. And the other thing that I found is that if I had a period of a lot of high spikes, it would go for a while and I wouldn't track anything. And I think it was partly because I was so busy trying to manage it and just trying to make adjustments that I didn't want to get caught up in having to think about it. And plus, it's kind of depressing if you're just thinking about how much your head hurts all the time. So, yeah?
I was wondering if your doctor's appreciating it, because I've had experiences where I write up a report, I take it into the doctor.
Yeah.
They're like, let's just put this aside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wrote it up for a reason. Like, I don't want to waste your time and all that. So typically my experience is doctors don't want my report.
Right. I did have that at the start when I started trying to do the medical terminology. I got my Netter's anatomy and I was, learning all of that. It was not a good use of my time. Just showing them the picture, that was helpful. Because at the start I would try to give them more information and they'd be like, no, let me figure it out. But just showing it to them, at first my doctor was she was a little leery. She's like, what is going on? But then she sees it now and she's like, oh, and she makes notes and so forth. And sometimes it doesn't seem to mean as much to her as it does to me, but it's still, it gives me kind of some sort of comfort to be able to take it to her and say, this is what's going on. Yeah.
How reusable do you think the tracking is that you developed for other kinds of chronic conditions? And also, have you tried open sourcing, for example, like the database schema and the web app to try to make this available to other people?
I was working on making the original tracking application available, but it was just too big. And also, I was very leery of putting it out there because of the personal health information and privacy, and also, safeguarding the data. And I didn't really have a clear vision of where I wanted to take it in terms of other people's use of it. So I just backed off on it. I'm actually working on a mobile version now that is going to be more available. I've talked to a couple of people about it, and I'm a lot more hopeful about that because I've had more time to think about it and refine it. I really think that I track results, so I find that very helpful for me rather than just tracking what I do. I track whether it works or not. And I'm hoping that I can, pass that along to other people and also share what I've learned from that. But I do think that it could be helpful for others as well. Anything? No? No?
I'm curious about cause and effect. I know you mentioned it a little bit,
Yeah.
almost in the sense the more you track it, the more you think about it, the more
Yeah.
that it might occur.
Right.
So did you see any trends that indicate, the frequency of your tracking may correlate with the magnitude of the headaches, or did you just have a qualitative sense about how that was, and
Yeah.
what's your sense about that?
I found that, well, I had a fairly recent spate of a couple of months of almost daily tracking. And at the start, I found that, well, the reason that I was tracking was because my headaches were really bad and I needed to do something. And as I took action, I changed what I was eating a little bit. I also changed how I was exercising. I changed my sleeping patterns. I started taking naps more often. And I also did some more relaxation, and I saw it trailing off. And then I also saw, as it trailed off, I saw myself actually tracking less. So there would be a day between times, and then there'd be 2 days, and then 3 days, and then a week. And I did see a general trend downward in the severity and actually the number of locations in my head where there was pain. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you find that they were seasonal at all, or if they were affected by outside factors?
Oh, I got a lot of headaches in the holidays. Like a lot of people, I think, yeah. Because looking at my notes, family visit, Pennsylvania, Virginia, I think that it's been more related to kind of life situations versus season. I think that if the season correlates with events that are happening in my life, like travels, out of state to go visit family during that most wonderful time of the year, that is a seasonal correlation, but it's larger in a larger context. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just noticed one of your graphs on one of your slides, and I was just curious because I noticed that the spikes seem to be in the winter, so I didn't know if that had anything to do with if sunlight played a part in your life, like the amount of sunlight, or if it was.
Well, I think that. Yeah, I think that relates to me not getting as much exercise during that time, getting less exercise, and having more general tightness and more pain, and just things being a real pain in the neck, and that translating to headaches as well. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Kay.
Yeah. Great.